Prosecutors, politics, and personal ambition. That's the focus of tonight's angle. As a former criminal defense attorney, I saw my share of individuals and companies caught in the crosshairs of government investigators who desperately wanted a trophy on the wall. We know the scenes. You know, a CEO arrested and cuffed at his or her office for all the employees to see for maximum humiliation. A prosecutor holding a press conference claiming the evidence will show that some high-profile person is guilty of myriad crimes, meaning jail for the rest of his adult life. It's all high drama. It's all like an episode of Law and Order. Now, of course, we need prosecutors to help lock up the bad guys, whether they're white-collar criminals or violent offenders. And when they're operating professionally, I'm talking about prosecutors, and in good faith, they should be recognized for the public service that they provide. But long before today's IG report was released, come on, most of us knew that the FBI's handling of the Clinton email and Russian probes are textbook examples of how cases should not be handled. Of course, the usual suspects spent most of the day downplaying the findings of the IG. Because the IG found no political bias. Oh, it's just run-of-the-mill insubordination here.
We just got the same kind of hammer you used to nail in a painting on the wall.
The Hillary case was properly decided on the law. And that's the headline number one. Number two, no indication or evidence that political biases.
It's deeply disturbing that the Republicans remain obsessed with undermining our intelligence and law enforcement agencies.
Okay, nice try, Nancy. But the IG's findings show the opposite. As we discussed earlier, the evidence shows that FBI Director Jim Comey operated according to his own set of rules in the Clinton email investigation. Quote, Comey admitted that he concealed his intentions from the DOJ until the morning of his press conference on July 5th and instructed his staff to do the same. We found that it was extraordinary and insubordinate for Comey to do so. We acknowledge that Comey faced difficult choices in late October 2016. However, we found it extraordinary that Comey assessed that it was best that the FBI director not speak directly with the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General. Like so many people in this town, he thought, Jim Comey, that his title gave him license to ignore basic prosecutorial protocols. And no wonder he wasn't all that keen on pursuing Hillary's use of an unsecured server, given the fact that we found out today that he himself was using a personal Gmail account to conduct government business. Even Hillary referenced that in a tweet today. And if you, like I, thought Comey came off as imperious in television interviews for that stupid book of his, check out this tweet. He said today in a tweet, I respect the DOJ IG office, which is why I urge them to do this review. The conclusions are reasonable, even though I disagree with some. People of good faith can see an unprecedented situation differently. I pray no director faces it again. Thanks to IG's people for hard work. Well, he lost me at people of good faith. And notice, by the way, how he makes himself out to be the victim here. It's unbelievable. Comey should change his middle name to Hubris. The man has learned absolutely nothing from this experience. And remember, by the way, this is the guy who signed off on 3 FISA applications and didn't think it was necessary to tell the FISA court that Hillary paid for the Steele dossier. This was the same man who allowed Peter Strzok, the FBI agent, to change the description of Mrs. Clinton's use of the private server from grossly negligent to merely extremely careless, so as not to trigger the underlying criminal statute. But of course, there was this breaking news to compete with the IG release today.
The New York Attorney General has just announced a lawsuit against the Donald J. Trump Foundation.
filed just less than an hour ago a 41-page civil complaint alleging that the Donald J. Trump Foundation was actually an empty shell.
New York's Attorney General is suing President Trump and his 3 oldest children, alleging, quote, self-dealing and other persistent illegal conduct at the president's charity.
Oh, I'm sure this is all just a coincidence. The timing of this lawsuit, come on, against the Trump Foundation is beyond suspicious. Now, remember, it comes from the New York Attorney General's office. Consider the source. Disgraced former Attorney General of New York, Eric Schneiderman, who you might remember sent out a fundraising email right after the investigation into the foundation was opened. He's a truly odious figure who abused and humiliated his female victims and then used his office and his position to threaten them into silence. Mark my words, we haven't heard the last of what he did to his victims. And the person who continues his crusade, Barbara Underwood, who said upon taking over for Schneiderman, quote, I believe this job at this moment in history is the most important job I have ever had. Oh, yeah, little subtlety there. Well, think about it. Donald Trump operated a foundation that had zero overhead, no administrative costs, and gave away more than $19 million to a variety of charitable causes. Trump and his companies personally poured $8 million into the foundation. Now, there was a mistaken contribution made to Pam Bondi's campaign, but that was rectified once it was discovered. In other words, this is penny ante stuff that would never be pursued by the New York State Attorney General's office if Donald Trump hadn't gotten into politics. This is yet another example of politicized law enforcement, an abuse of process. This time it was through a civil action on the state level. Where were they, by the way, at the federal level when the Clinton Foundation was accepting funds from foreign governments while Hillary was Secretary of State, sometimes then wanting to get meetings with Hillary? Meanwhile, Comey and his political activists, posing as agents, bent the legal standards for Hillary Clinton, allowing her to walk free. And they assumed that she was going to be going into the White House. Let's not forget. Clinton, in setting up that private server, made up her own rules, just as Comey did in clearing her of any criminal wrongdoing. My friends, this is all a hideous perversion of justice. Now FBI Director Christopher Wray is insisting their IG report clears the FBI, though, of structural responsibility.
Nothing in this report impugns the integrity of our workforce as a whole.
Chris Wray, I'm sorry, you're wrong. Chris, there are consequences. The consequences are that your fellow citizens question whether or not they can have confidence in the world's premier law enforcement agency.
Remember when Jim Comey said this, by the way?
It makes me mildly nauseous to think that we might have had some impact on the election.
It makes me wildly nauseous reading this IG report and learning how Comey and his colleagues intended to impact the election. And they failed. And that's the angle.